Does the term mental health scare you? Does it put you off? Let me put your mind at ease. Hi, I'm Lisa Marie. Welcome to my channel, Living My Best Life. I hope you're living your best life too. If you're new here, I invite you to subscribe. And if you've been here before, welcome back. A lot of people deal with mental health issues. People you don't even realize are dealing with mental health issues. It doesn't mean you're crazy. It shouldn't have a stigma. First thing I want to say is I am not an expert in mental health, but I do want to make you familiar with some of the more commonplace terms that are out there regarding mental health, just so you have an awareness. If you need to know more, there are other ways you can get the information and you can talk to professionals about this. This is the layperson's version of mental health information. People that are struggling with mental health struggle with something invisible. For example, if you have cancer or you've had a heart attack or you've been in an accident, those are more visible. People see them, they easily have empathy, people are more sympathetic. Mental health you can't see unless somebody is really, really obvious and not dealing with it properly. But most people walking around with mental health issues are just regular people like you and me. And they get judged so easily if they share that information, and they shouldn't, because it's an illness just like any other kind of an illness. It just shows itself differently. Here are a few of the ones that are more widely known that are out there, and just so you know what they are and how to understand them. Depression. You hear a lot of people talking about depression. There's basically two kinds of depression. There's situational depression and there's clinical depression. Situational would be, let's say a loved one recently died in your life and you're very down about it. The reason you're feeling down is because of the event that happened, or you recently got divorced, or you were broken up with, or a pet died, something, very sad. You may be depressed for a period of time because of it, but it's situational. It's not a chemical imbalance in your body. And in time, if you allow yourself to heal and deal with it, it will go away as you move forward in life. Clinical depression, however, is different. It's a chemical imbalance. And oftentimes you have to take something from a medical professional to get that balance back in order. And it can be very difficult. People don't give a lot of sympathy because they can't see it. They don't understand it. They say, just think positive, snap out of it. Well, it's a chemical imbalance, and they can't always do that. In fact, mostly you can't. So we need to be more understanding and kind to people who are suffering from clinical depression. They are not doing it on purpose. They can't just snap out of it. Empathy is critical in that situation. Anxiety is another mental health issue that a lot of people have. Sometimes there are specific triggers that cause someone to be anxious. So that's not the same thing as having an anxiety disorder. So let's say you're afraid of heights and you're about to go somewhere where you're up high and you get very anxious. Well, that fear of heights was a trigger. You're not anxious all the time. You're just anxious because you are up high. So that's one kind of anxiety. Then there's an anxiety disorder where you're anxious most of the time. And you can even have an anxiety panic attack where you feel like you're actually having a heart attack. It's a physical thing. It's not just in your head. Having an anxiety disorder, you're constantly in a state of worry and fear and concern, and you're obsessing and over thinking about something until you can hardly function because you're so nervous and upset about it. And when you have that, you need to get professional help because you can't function in life feeling like that. Another mental health condition that you hear about is bipolar. It used to be called manic depressive, and now the term has been changed to bipolar. There's more than one version of this. I'm not going to get into all of that because I personally don't really know all the details. But as a overall mental health disorder, what it means is that somebody is having very high highs and very low lows, and those can change slowly or quickly, but you're usually in one or the other. So they can be so incredibly depressed that they're suicidal, or they can be so high that they don't sleep and they think they can conquer the world. And then there's different versions of it which fall more in between. Again, this is a disorder that has a chemical imbalance, so you do need professional help for something like that. It can be very dangerous when you're on the depressed side. And when you're on the manic side, you can really wear yourself out. Another mental health disorder that we hear a lot about is ADHD or ADD. ADHD has the hyperactive component to it, where ADD doesn't. People that suffer from this have a hard time focusing their attention. There's usually impulsive behavior involved, and if you have ADHD, you also have the hyperness involved in that. I personally have dealt with that for my entire life, so I know that one is a tough one. It's hard for me to stay focused. I have to really work hard at it, and it's a real thing. Now, not every child has it. Not every child should be medicated. You need to get them evaluated, or adults can even be evaluated. So just because someone's hyper doesn't mean they have it. Some people are just high energy. But there is a difference, and you can be evaluated, and it can be determined, and not everybody does have this. And I know it's one of those terms that when kids act up, they throw it out there. Sometimes kids just aren't stimulated enough in school. They're too smart for the level they're in, and then they act up because they're bored. That's not the same thing. Another mental health issue is dementia. It's not the same thing as just memory loss or Alzheimer's. Dementia is also a chemical thing where you start losing your memories, but you're not in full swing Alzheimer's. And also you might think things happened that didn't, or you might get disoriented or think you're in a different time from what you really are, like in the past versus the current time, or exaggerate things that happened because they felt bigger to you. It's a serious condition, and it needs to be dealt with. So if you know anyone who's dealing with that, they do need to get some help because it's scary for them, and I'm sure it's scary for those around them. Another condition is OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. This is when you have excessive thoughts or obsessions that lead to repetitive behavior or compulsions. So like an example would be, you keep checking to see if you lock the door, or you have to have things set in a certain order all the time, or you have to do things in a certain order all the time. And if you don't, you get very uncomfortable and upset and agitated. Now, some people have a routine. That doesn't mean that they are OCD. It just means that that makes them remember everything they want to do. But if you can't handle not doing something a certain way, you might have a touch of OCD. Again, there are professionals out there that can help with that. Not all OCD is severe and needs to be dealt with that way, and it doesn't affect your life every day, but if it does, then you do need to pursue that. Another term that you might hear is PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And we've heard a lot about that when you think about like wars, people that have been to wars and then they hear loud noises and that's a trigger and they react. And that is PTSD. There's other ways you could have PTSD as well. Basically, it's the difficulty recovering after experiencing or witnessing a traumatic or terrifying event. Triggers, things that sound like it or look like it or feel like that, can bring that moment of that event back. And then you have a reaction to it as if it's still happening. I've seen people go through this, and it's horrible to watch because it's real for them. They are literally experiencing that thing that traumatized them all over again. And it's so scary. And really, a lot of the times if someone's struggling with that, they do need to go see a professional because there are ways to deal with that so they don't have to live in constant fear of finding themselves in that moment again. I mean, that would be horrible to live like that. My heart really goes out to the people that are dealing with that. Another mental health issue that we hear a lot about today is autism. Now, autism basically describes an entire spectrum. So from one end, like an Asperger's condition where someone is highly intelligent and just doesn't function as well in a social emotional situation, to non-functioning autism where they can't really take care of themselves or communicate properly. Most people are somewhere in between, and most people can function, but a lot of it depends on how they are being dealt with as a child and how they come through it. Not all professionals are able to help with this because a lot of it's nurture. And so it's really important that the home life is very supportive and nurturing for those people so that they feel they have confidence and they're loved. Autism affects the central nervous system. It impacts people's ability to communicate and interact with others. The last condition we're going to talk about is schizophrenia. Now, I always thought this was somebody that had two personalities. That's not really what it is, though. It affects someone's ability to think and feel and behave clearly. Sometimes they hear voices, sometimes they have hallucinations, sometimes there is another personality. It's a lot of different things, and it's a very serious disorder, and they can become violent, they can hurt themselves, and schizophrenia absolutely does need to be treated. That is not something that you can just deal with at home. You would need to see a professional and get help for that. That is a much more serious disorder than some of the other ones we talked about. Although bipolar can have a side of it that's that way as well, but it depends on where you are. I just wanted people to be aware and give you the opportunity to know what they are so that you can have more empathy and understanding and not judge people. Just because they don't have a big gash on their face doesn't mean they're not hurting. Just because they didn't have a heart attack or cancer and are getting chemo or in the hospital doesn't mean they aren't suffering. These are real illnesses and they need to be treated as such, and the people need to be respected as they deal with them. So I want to encourage you to be open-minded, respectful, and learn more. so that you can be a better person and understand how other people are suffering and be there for them. We all need to be there for each other. Cornball, one who tries to be cool but doesn't see how uncool they really are. And now you know, so you can be part of the conversation. See you next time. Bye.